I was wiping down the kitchen counter when Amber stormed in, carrying a stack of papers so thick it looked like a small book. Before I could step back, she slammed them into my chest with such force the top page scraped my skin. The smack echoed across the tiles. "Sign these and sign them now." Her voice was sharp, practiced, dripping with the kind of disdain that had slowly become her daily language. I lifted my eyes to her face, the woman my son married, the woman who had spent years pulling him further away from me, and found nothing but frost in her expression. Behind her stood Lucas, my Lucas. His arms were crossed, his face stiff, and his eyes refused to meet mine. When he was little, he used to look at me with so much warmth I thought my heart would burst. Now he looked through me like I had become a chore. Amber jabbed the papers toward me again. "This is a relinquishment agreement. You sign this, and you give up any rights you think you still have here. This house isn't yours." I read the first lines: voluntary surrender of residence and interest. My fingers trembled, and Amber smirked, delighted to witness my fear. "You're old," she continued. "You walk around like a leftover from some museum exhibit. This house should belong to people who can actually use it." Lucas shifted awkwardly, but he didn't disagree. He only said quietly, "Mom, we need to move forward. Amber and I have plans." Plans, not family. Plans. A pressure gathered in my chest, not from age, but from the ache of hearing your own child choose someone else's comfort over your dignity. For a moment, everything inside me felt like it was tilting. Amber stepped closer. "Do you know what bothers me most? Everyone in town thinks your name sounds so elegant and like you're some kind of royalty. Meanwhile, no one even remembers my name. I'm done living in your shadow." It struck me then her resentment wasn't born from anything I did. She carried it long before she ever stepped into this kitchen. I whispered, "Amber, this is my home." She laughed sharply. "Not anymore." Lucas finally lifted his gaze. He swallowed, then nodded at the hallway camera he had installed. "Mom, please, just sign it." The world didn't sway, but my heart did. And yet I didn't break. Not there. Not in front of them. Because even as Amber hovered over me with her carefully sharpened cruelty, I felt something stir deep inside. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Strength. But what Amber didn't know was that the papers she was trying to force into my hands weren't even the real trap she had prepared for me. Amber didn't leave the kitchen after shoving the papers at me. She stood there, arms folded, chin lifted like a guard waiting for a prisoner's compliance. Lucas lingered behind her, silent, shoulders tense, avoiding every bit of eye contact with me. His silence hurt more than her insults ever could. I placed the papers gently on the table. "I'm not signing anything without reading it," I said softly. Amber scoffed loudly. "Oh, please, as if you could even understand half of it. That's why we simplified everything. It's already highlighted. Just sign on the yellow line." Highlighted, simplified, prepared in advance. They expected me to obey without question. Amber leaned forward. "You're playing difficult, and at your age, that's not very wise." Lucas swallowed hard. "Mom, just listen to her. We don't want problems. Amber and I are trying to build something here." I looked at him, really looked, and suddenly saw the truth written all over his face. He wanted my house, my home, the place I built brick by brick with my late husband. The place where every wall held a memory of raising him, loving him, teaching him. Amber tilted her head with an icy smile. "You've overstayed your welcome. You move slow, you think slow, and you're becoming a burden. This house needs fresh energy." I stayed quiet, not because I agreed, but because silence was the only thing protecting my dignity in that moment. Amber took my silence as surrender. She stepped closer. "Let's make it simple. If you sign today, we can arrange a comfortable place for you. Something small, affordable for someone your age. Something small, affordable. A box, not a home. But then, almost too quickly, Amber's expression changed. She turned, walked toward the hallway camera, and adjusted her voice, making it louder, sweeter, more performative. "We just want what's best for you," and she said dramatically, ensuring the camera captured her kindness. My stomach turned. The camera wasn't there for security. It was there to record a version of me, confused, pressured, compliant, to use as evidence if they needed it later. Amber glanced back at me, her mask slipping for a split second, revealing pure calculation. I pressed my hand against the counter to steady myself. Everything inside me trembled, not from fear, but from awakening. Because for the first time, I sensed something bigger than their greed. Something hidden. Something planned. Amber walked toward the living room, her heels echoing across the floor. Lucas followed, but before leaving, he paused and looked at me, guilt flickering in his eyes, like a candle struggling to stay lit. "Mom, don't make this harder than it needs to be," he whispered. Then he left, and I finally exhaled. But an hour later, when I found a second set of papers hidden inside Lucas's briefcase, papers even Amber didn't know about, I realized the betrayal ran far deeper than I imagined. The house fell quiet after they walked away, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the kind of silence that makes the air feel heavier, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. I stood in the kitchen for several minutes, staring at the highlighted signature lines on the papers. My name looked small beside them. I wasn't ready to face what they wanted from me, so I stepped away. As I moved through the hallway, something felt wrong. The door to Lucas's home office was slightly open, a room he usually kept locked. My chest tightened. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it wasn't right. But something inside me, something deeper than fear, told me I needed to. I pushed the door gently. It creaked open. The room smelled faintly of cologne and printer ink. Papers covered the desk, scattered as if someone had been working in a rush. And then I saw it. A manila envelope, half open, with my name handwritten in the corner. Not Amber's handwriting. Not bold or sharp or angry. This writing was familiar, rounded, neat, hesitant. Lucas's handwriting. My heart thudded painfully as I pulled the envelope closer. Inside was a second set of documents. Not the relinquishment papers Amber flaunted. These were far worse. A residential transfer request. A financial freeze authorization. A petition to gain decision-making control. All with my name on them. All unsigned for now. All prepared by my own son. My breath caught. I gripped the edge of the desk to keep myself steady. Lucas wasn't just following Amber's lead. He had his own plan. A plan that didn't include me. I sank into his chair, the documents shaking in my hands. A memory hit me, a powerful, painful one. Lucas as a boy, sitting on my lap, promising he would always take care of me. When I mauled, his tiny hand had grabbed my finger and squeezed it with such innocence. Now that hand was preparing to erase my autonomy. I blinked hard, forcing back the sting in my eyes. I had no one. No siblings. No living family close enough to intervene. Amber likely knew that. Lucas definitely knew that. But someone else knew something too. As I slid the papers back into the envelope, a small folded sticky note fell out, barely the size of my palm. The handwriting on it was delicate and shaky, definitely not Lucas's. It said only, "Be careful. They're rushing this. Not everything is what it seems." The room spun slightly. Who wrote this? How did they know? Why warn me? I placed the note in my pocket just as I heard footsteps approaching. I put everything back exactly where I found it and slipped out of the office. Amber's voice echoed down the hallway, sharp and impatient. "Anne, come back to the kitchen. We're not done talking." I exhaled slowly. No, we definitely weren't done. But later that night, when I discovered who left the warning note, someone I never expected, it changed the entire direction of what I had to do next. That night, the house felt colder than usual. Perhaps it was the draft slipping through the hallway windows. Or maybe it was simply the weight of what I had discovered. Either way, sleep refused to come. I sat on my bed, staring at the tiny folded note in my hand. Be careful. They're rushing this. Not everything is what it seems. The handwriting tugged at my memory. I had seen it somewhere before, not in this house. Not in any official papers, not in any hurried grocery list. Then it clicked. Mrs. Calloway, my neighbor of nearly 20 years. The woman who brought me homemade soup every winter. The woman who noticed when my curtains stayed drawn too long. The woman who had recently quietly started lingering outside. Just a little longer than usual. Her eyes scanning my house with worrying. I felt a lump form in my throat. She knew something. Before I did. But what exactly had she seen? A soft noise outside my bedroom door snapped me back into the moment. A shadow moved beneath the doorway. Someone was checking if I was awake. I quickly slipped the note under my pillow and forced myself to lie down. The doorknob twitched just once, then silence. Eventually, the shadow disappeared. My heart hammered. They were monitoring me. Every movement, every breath, every hesitation. The next morning, I opened my curtains slightly and saw her, Mrs. Calloway, standing on her porch, pretending to water her plants though the soil was already soaked. She glanced up at my window, her expression a mixture of concern and urgency. I knew I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Amber cornered me before I could step outside. Ready to sign today? She asked, her smile painfully practiced. I didn't answer. I simply walked past her. She grabbed my arm. And don't walk away from me. I turned to her slowly, and for the first time, she saw something in my eyes that made her step back. Strength, clarity, resolve. I'm going to get some air, I said calmly. You don't control that. Amber's jaw tightened, but she didn't follow. Lucas was watching from the living room doorway, shoulders slumped. He looked like a man trapped in a decision he wasn't brave enough to question. Outside, the cool breeze hit my face, and a strange comfort settled in my chest. One step, then another, until I reached the fence separating my yard from Mrs. Calloway's. You got my note, she said quietly, without turning her head. I nodded. I've been seeing things, she whispered. Hearing things. They're trying to move fast. And someone else is involved. Someone they haven't told you about. My breath hitched. Do. She looked around nervously. Not here. But you need to know you're in danger if you stay quiet. Danger. The word sank into my bones. Before I could ask more, the sound of a door slamming behind me made both of us flinch. Amber's voice carried through the yard. And we need to talk, now. I straightened slowly, because now I knew too much to stay silent, and far too much to stay still. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the person Mrs. Calloway revealed next. The one who had been pulling the strings behind Amber and Lucas all along.